I have a problem. I really like making video games. I got into it recently and it turns out it's really fun. Problem is, I barely know what I'm doing. There are so many facets to game development that you don't even think about until you're there writing the code. And this is great because it means there's always more to learn, but it also makes getting started pretty daunting, especially when you have to start learning things about vector math, like dot products and cross products and all sorts of things like that. And that kind of stuff is why I've never really taken game development seriously until now, but I realized I have tools for this. Tools that I teach to my clients all the time to help them learn to program. And they're pretty simple. Do it a lot of times and break it into small pieces. And these two tools aren't limited to programming, by the way. They're useful in literally every profession. After all, you don't learn piano by trying to play Rachmaninoff, and you don't learn woodworking by trying to make a ship. But I digress. The point is, by breaking a task into small pieces, and then doing those pieces lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of times, we can get pretty good at a task pretty fast. Note that pretty fast in this context means a few weeks or months, not just a few hours or days, because learning a skill takes time, and there's just no way around that. But the question I've always had about this related to game development is, how do we apply these two tools to the development of a game? After all, anyone who keeps up with any game development news at all knows that it usually takes multiple years to make a full game. And 1 to 5 years doesn't exactly sound like a short feedback cycle to me. And really, there are lots of ways that you can go about this, but my favorite, and the one I'm excited about to share with you today, is what a friend of mine calls microgames. The idea behind microgames is that they are, well, tiny. They focus in on one single mechanic and just try to get that one mechanic working, or tell that one tiny, tiny, tiny little story. And by story, I mean like 3 seconds of gameplay level of story. And it may not be fancy, and it may not have much juice, as they say, but it works and allows that one mechanic to shine. The beauty of making a microgame is it lets us focus in on just one mechanic and learn just one thing at a time. So we're not learning an entire genre worth of game mechanics and game ideas all at once. And then because it's such a tiny game, you can make a bajillion of them, or at least a lot of them relative to how many games you can usually make if you're not trying to make really tiny games. And then of course, you can make them more quickly because they are so tiny, as long as you don't give in to feature creep. All that to say, in order to build my game development skills, I was like, why not, for the next year, just make a microgame every week? And then as I was thinking about that, I thought it would be really fun to bring you guys along for the journey. After all, I'm going to be learning a lot of things, so I might as well share things I learn with you guys. So I'll be posting videos like this one for each game, and if you want to get in on this, I'll have links to the details of each microgame in the description below the video, so you can have a go if you want to, as well as a game prompt generator or two in case you like the idea of making a microgame but don't like the one I picked. Also, I use Unreal Engine because it's the easiest one for me, but everything that we go over in these videos you could totally do in just about any engine, because most of the concepts between different engines are basically the same between like Unity, Godot, Unreal. Even Game Maker has a lot of overlap as well, but the main difference is that they call things by different names. That and royalty structures, which that's a conversation for another day. So the first microgame that I'm going to make is I'm going to recreate the jump mechanics from Super Mario 64. There are two main reasons I want to do this. One is because I just really love the way Mario moves in that game, and I guess in most of the Mario games after that too. And the other is that making those jump mechanics feels a little bit daunting, so I really want to conquer that feeling and have made one myself. Also, you really just can't go wrong with jump mechanics. They're in so many games. It's useful to know. But yeah, I've always loved how the movement mechanics feel in Super Mario 64. I want to make my own. Now, I may not have time for animation because I'm not very good at animation. I'm pretty much a noob at it, and it's really low priority in this microgame. I'm mostly focused on the actual methods of movement that Mario uses. Thought I heard something. Specifically, I'm interested in his regular jump, obviously, his triple jump, and his U-turn jump. That's what I'm calling it anyway. So we'll see how those three go, and if they somehow go perfectly smoothly with no issues whatsoever, then I'll try the crouch backflip as well. And maybe even the long jump. And of course, if everything just goes perfectly, there are plenty of other Mario movement mechanics that we can use, or try to make, I should say. But this is already quite a bit for a microgame, probably a bit too much, we'll see. So I'm just gonna dive in, let's make a basic plan for how we're going to approach the game, and then we'll get coding. I'll be starting out with the third-person game template that Unreal Engine provides. This has most of the functionality that I'll need, like character movement and even a basic jump, even though it's just kind of a single jump. And I'm sure that their jump has settings you can do to make it more like the Mario jump, but for the most part, I'm not going to bother with those. I kind of want to make it from scratch. Also, the observant of you might notice that there are a couple other microgame folders inside my microgames folder. And yeah, there are. I actually had done a couple of microgames before this, before I realized, wait, this would actually be fun to record. That said, those didn't have the time limit of 1 week, and they weren't part of this challenge, so you're basically starting from scratch, and I might share those games with you at some point if you want to see them and if it makes sense. I just didn't think about it until now. But since they use the third-person template for their player character, I'm just going to copy that over and use that as a starting point, instead of importing the entire third-person template into my project again. Ah, right. I had removed jumping. Perfect! After all, what's the point if I don't make it myself? I'm going to start out by making a simple single jump, and by the way, throughout this video, you'll see the video just kind of stop moving for a bit every once in a while. That means one of two things. Either I am Googling a question, or I'm taking a break. I use Pomodoro timers to force me to take short breaks every half hour or so, to prevent me from hyperfixating and suddenly wondering how it got to Thursday already. It also keeps me mentally fresh throughout the day, so that I'm not a zombie when I get done with work for the day. I'll probably do a whole video on Pomodoros sometime. I really like them. But for now, just know that's what's going on. The point is, I'm not editing out the pauses because I want any newer developers watching this to see how much thinking and Googling and ChatGPTing and brain resting actually goes into even a relatively simple task like this. Programming isn't like in the movies. It actually takes time and effort, and a lot of hitting your head into a wall sometimes. As it happened, the initial jump ended up being actually really simple with very few issues. I added a little counter to count how many times I had jumped, which lets me count up to a triple jump, but you can't just do the triple jump whenever, you have to time it right after you land. So I played around with a few ideas for how to do the timer. Delays just aren't very consistent in Unreal Engine. They have all sorts of weird little idiosyncrasies that I kept running into. So I ended up using 2 floats to make a basic makeshift timer. As far as I can tell, this actually is pretty common practice, but let me know in the comments if there's a more standardized way to do this part. This felt a little bit like putting duct tape on a problem. But the way the timer works is there's a jump window, which is just how many seconds you have after landing to initiate the next jump in the sequence, and a jump timer, which counts down from the jump window to 0 each event tick. Event tick is often called update in other engines. It's the thing that triggers each frame. Once the timer hits 0, it resets the jump counter back to 0, so the triple jump starts over. And this ended up being surprisingly simple and straightforward, which surprised me. I expected the triple jump to take some amount of complication, but the only real issue I ran into was delays are weird. So then I started thinking, if triple jump is this easy, how hard can the other jumps be? You guys you saw that, right? I don't know what it was, but I'm not going to worry about it. So with the triple jump complete and still being on the first day of development, I started out the U-turn jump. That's what I'm calling it. This one should also be pretty easy. All I need to do is check which direction I'm going, and then I can start the U-turn jump window when the player's input direction, so the way they press the joystick, is directly, or at least mostly directly, opposite of the direction they're moving. So basically when the character tries to turn around. Except, how do I get the current direction? This turned out to be very complicated. So, like any good software engineer, I worked on something totally different for a little while. I spent a few minutes making the level a little bit less hideous and giving me some platforms to jump on to kind of test out the triple jump and to see how it felt. And overall, it felt pretty good. It could definitely use a bit of tweaking. It wasn't perfect, and there were certain aspects that felt a little wonky. But overall, I'm pretty happy with it, especially for a microgame. And literally just a little bit of tweaking will make it feel pretty good. So, I had to return to the U-turn. The U-turn jump was always my favorite in Super Mario 64 and other Mario games. It just feels good. Granted, a lot of that is because of the animations in Mario 64 and, again, the other Mario games. But that's not the point. The point is, it's an awesome jump, and I love it. I started out with the same basic framework as with the triple jump, but obviously for the U-turn jump, I don't need to count how many times I've jumped. All I need is the timer. And that was pretty easy. Unfortunately, the default third-person template in Unreal Engine does not seem to use the character movement component, which is the component that keeps track of which direction the character is going, which means I don't know which direction the character is going. And of course, if you don't know where you're going, you don't know if you've turned around. So, if I was using the character movement component, then all I would have to do is dot product the direction they're moving and the direction they've inputted as the direction they want to go. And the dot product itself will tell me how aligned those two vectors are. So basically, if I could just use the character movement component, then it knows which direction the character is moving. So all I have to do is take the dot product of the direction they're moving and the direction that they are inputting, and then see if that's negative. Because if it's negative, that means they're trying to turn around. There's a little bit of nuance beyond that, but it's not very much, so it should be pretty simple. So that day ended on a bit of an L. It was 9 p.m. when I stopped because I just couldn't think hard enough. I was like, there's no way I'm going to be able to figure this out tonight. So I just put it down for the day. Definitely a rough way to end a long day of development, but it happens, you know? And sometimes that's just how it goes. At least I didn't do that on Friday. That would have been much more rough. But I'm a little worried about how much time I'm gonna have because, yeah, that took quite a while. That's already a day gone, so yeah. And on to day 2. Some of you may be wondering why I seem a bit worried about the time when it's only day 2 and I've got a whole week. And it's a reasonable question, but the fact of the matter is I do all of the editing and recording and posting of videos myself. It's a one-man show here. So when I say I have 1 week to make the microgame, that's 1 week to make the game and then record me talking about making the game and then edit the video and then post the video, set the title and thumbnail and all that stuff, you know, all of that. So all of the non-programming stuff usually takes anywhere from 2 to 4 days, depending on the exact video and how many takes I end up needing to make. So when I already used up 1 day on essentially just the triple jump, it was rough. It was a rough way to start. But I'm not giving up, obviously. I mean, you're watching this, so obviously I didn't give up. And that's part of the process, right? You learn what you can and can't handle in a short amount of time. That's actually one of the big benefits of microgames and of doing small tasks repeatedly. Plus, it is fun. Game development is fun, even when it's frustrating. But that is why I'm a little worried about my ability to finish it in 1 week. So, that next day, I got to work on replacing the input and movement with the character movement component. And you know what? It actually went pretty smoothly. It was a lot easier than I had expected. It took a little while to get everything squared away and figure out how to translate movement axes, so the input axes from the joystick or the arrow keys into a vector that is a direction. But once I got that going and did the dot product, it kind of just worked. It felt amazing. Before I knew it, my U-turn timer was up and running and I could do U-turns. And actually I did them a lot by accident, which is kind of cool. Unfortunately, this made me just a little bit cocky. I mean, brave, definitely brave. So I thought maybe I'd add some animations. Thankfully, Unreal Engine actually has some built-in stuff for making animations, so I don't have to learn how to use a totally different platform like Blender or something. I'm sure making animations in Blender is probably ultimately a bit more efficient, but not for me right now. And as you already know, I'm in a bit of a time crunch with this, so I went ahead and just did it in Unreal. And I've done this a couple times before, but I did have to look up a few things like how to save a keyframe and whatnot. But other than that, it's just a matter of actually getting the pose, setting the keyframe, and doing that again. So I made a few animations for the different jumps. I thought about having my Not Mario do flips in the animation, but I figured that if I just rotated the character in-game while jumping, that would probably be a little bit easier than dealing with the whole flip animation thing. Yeah, I was wrong. I was so wrong. The next day and a half, yes, day and a half, were full of, well, let me just show you. Yeah. So that was not my best decision. I did learn how to use timelines, so that's something. Took me a long time to figure out what was going wrong with these rotations. Turns out, I eventually realized that the problem was he was rotating around his feet, not his center of gravity, which does this. Instead of changing the animations, I decided to just roll with it and simplify the rotations a little bit so that they were a little more passable, and that ended up being less work than just totally redoing the animations. And also, I was on day 3 now, so definitely running out of time. So eventually I ended up with this, and I was elated to get this far. It felt amazing. Does it look amazing? Heck no. It looks pretty derpy. Maybe like a 1990s video game or something, or maybe early 2000s. But I was pretty proud of it. It definitely was a lot of work that actually paid off. But it's fun and it's goofy. And this is just a micro game, so I should avoid feature creep anyway. Okay, no, there's... Do you guys see that? It's making me really uncomfortable. So with that, I was pretty much done. But I wanted a little bit more of a level to jump around in. Something vaguely resembling the Mario Castle. I have enough time, right? It's only Thursday. I have plenty of time. Why do I do this to myself? So it's the next week now. Yeah. I'm recording this about a week after my decision to just do one more thing. I did not leave myself any time for anything except for making a micro game last week. I kept thinking things would be quick and then they weren't. But you know, it happens. We live and we learn. So this micro game is going to be a little bit more elaborate than my future ones because I'm going to be smarter next time. That's the point of learning, right? But yeah, definitely should have not tried to make a level, but it's pretty good for someone who doesn't know what they're doing. Oh man, yeah, yep. This is a 2-week micro game. So I did not manage to keep myself inside the time limit this time. I just kept adding things, and in a classic bout of feature creep, I just wouldn't stop. And while I am pretty proud of my derpy little Mario micro game, like I said, I'm gonna keep it a lot smaller in the future. I went way overboard, but I still want to show you guys. And again, it's not like, you know, I'm not selling this on some AAA platform or anything like that, but I think it's pretty great. So I'm gonna show you. Ta-da! But yeah, pretty decent for 1 week's work, I think. I just need to remember next time that I also have to record and edit and publish the YouTube video. But you know, we live and we learn. Oh yeah, and did I forget to mention that I make jump noises too?
Yo. Yahoo! Yahoo!
Yep, that's my voice. I pitch shifted it and tried to add a little bit of reverb to make it sound like a big room.
Yo. Whoa. Who?
Yeah. I tried to add footsteps too.
Whoa.
On Friday.
Who?
Friday. You'd think I'd know better by now.
Yahoo!
To those of you who are still here, thank you so much for joining me on this journey. Keep an eye out for the future videos. I'm going to be doing my best to do one each week. It shouldn't be every other week. But I hope you enjoyed this video as much as I did. Don't forget to like and subscribe and all that stuff if you want to see more of this kind of stuff. It also really helps the channel out. But I'm sure you know that by now. You probably watch enough YouTube to understand how that stuff works. Also, I will have links to various game development resources down below. I'll probably have a few links to some YouTube channels that are really useful as well. Mostly for Unreal, because again, that's what I use. But I'll also have the game prompt down below and then a game prompt generator for you if you want a game prompt generator. I'll probably be using that one for the next one. Regardless, thank you for joining me, and until next time, I will see you later.